All right, let's get right into it. In today's world, data is everything, right? But here's the thing. Not all data is created equal. Not even close. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack a solid, professional framework for data governance and classification. Honestly, it's one of the most essential tools you can have to protect your organization's most valuable assets.
So, let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. I want you to think about this. Is all of your organization's data equal? I mean, the immediate answer is, of course not. But the consequences of that simple no are just massive. If you're treating your public marketing flyers with the same level of security as your top secret R&D, you're not just being inefficient. You are taking on an incredible amount of risk.
And believe me, the stakes here are about as high as they get. When you get data classification wrong, it's not some tiny administrative oopsie. No way. This is the kind of mistake that exposes your organization to huge legal penalties, serious financial losses, and, well, the kind of hit to your reputation that can take years, if not forever, to bounce back from.
Okay, so here's a quick look at our game plan. First, we'll touch on why data governance is just not optional anymore. Then we'll get into the good stuff, a really powerful 4-tier classification framework. We'll make it super practical by comparing 2 different types of data, look at how to handle the really sensitive stuff, and then we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you can actually use. All right, let's dive into our first section, the data governance imperative. We live in a world that is just drowning in data. So this is really all about one thing: establishing control. It's about making sure your data is an asset that works for you, not a liability that works against you.
So what is data governance really? Let's break it down. It is definitely not a one-and-done project that you can just check off a to-do list. Think of it more like fitness. It's a continuous, proactive process to keep your data in shape. And the end goal? It's actually pretty simple. Improve the quality and security of your data so your business has a real, tangible edge over the competition.
Okay, now we're getting to the absolute core of our framework, the 4 tiers of classification. This is really where the rubber meets the road. It's how you go from just talking about data protection to actually doing it by prioritizing your efforts based on sensitivity and risk. So this table pretty much lays it all out. Let's walk through it. Down at the bottom, you've got public data. Super simple, right? This is your marketing material, your press releases. Easy. Then you move up to internal. This is stuff that's strictly for employees. Business plans, org charts, you get the idea. Now here's where it gets interesting. That jump from internal to confidential, that is the real test. That's where you see so many breaches, because a leak here has serious consequences. We're talking customer lists, payment info. But at the very top, that's restricted. This is the crown jewels, your secret formulas, your proprietary research. A breach here isn't just bad. It can mean criminal charges or fines so big they threaten the company's existence.
All right, theory is great, but let's make this super practical. We're going to look at a tale of 2 data sets. This is where we see how this classification framework actually dictates your security strategy out in the real world. So on one side, you've got your confidential customer lists. This data is heavily regulated by things you've heard of, like HIPAA or PCI DSS. If this stuff leaks, you're looking at big regulatory fines, and, just as bad, a massive loss of customer trust. But then, on the other side, you've got restricted proprietary research. This is the company's secret sauce, its core intellectual property. If this gets out, we're not just talking about fines. We're talking about a catastrophic financial blow that could literally put the entire business at risk.
Okay, so you see 2 very different kinds of risk. Now, knowing the classification is step 1. That's crucial. But applying the right security controls, that's where the real work begins. So how do we actually protect these 2 completely different but equally critical sets of data?
So for those confidential customer lists, the security playbook is pretty robust, but it's stuff you're probably familiar with. First, we lock down access using the principle of least privilege, which is just a fancy way of saying you don't get to see it unless your job absolutely depends on it. Of course, we're making sure we're compliant with all the privacy laws, and we're applying security from the moment the data is created to the moment it's destroyed. We'll even use things like tokenization to make the data less risky whenever we can.
But for that restricted research data, we have to level up. Big time. Access controls are dialed up to the absolute maximum. We're not just encrypting the data when it's sitting on a server or flying across the network, we're encrypting it even while it's being used. To do that, we use some really advanced stuff called privacy-enhancing technologies, or PETs. Now check this out. A fantastic example is something called homomorphic encryption. It literally lets you run calculations on data without ever decrypting it. How cool is that? And, of course, every single time someone touches that data, it's logged in an ironclad audit trail.
Okay, let's start to bring this all home and talk about the key takeaways. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about the technology. It's really about people, process, and building a true culture of data responsibility.
And a huge part of that culture is having clear roles, because let's be honest, this stuff can get confusing fast. So try thinking about it like this. The data owner, they're like the CEO of that data. The buck stops with them. The data custodian is the security guard at the vault, handling the technical side of keeping it safe. The data steward is like the librarian inside the vault, making sure all the data is high quality and easy to find. And finally, the data protection officer, or DPO, is your lawyer, making sure you're following all the rules. Every one of these roles is different, and you absolutely need all of them.
And this diagram really just nails the whole concept. You see, effective data management is all about how these three things work together. You've got data quality, which basically asks, is our information any good? Is it accurate? Then there's data integrity, which asks, is it safe? Can someone mess with it? And finally, data profiling, which is all about asking, do we even know what data we have in the first place? You see, you can't have one without the other two. They're totally connected.
So if you take away just one thing, let it be this. Getting your data classification right is not just another task. It is the absolute foundation. It's what you build your entire security program on. It's what your compliance efforts depend on. And more, it's what's going to determine whether you can use AI responsibly and effectively.
And that really brings us to the final question I want to leave you with, something to think about. As AI starts to consume massive amounts of your company's data, you really have to ask yourself, is our data classification framework strong enough? Is it precise enough? Is it truly ready for the AI era?